a good father, a loving husband, a friendly neighbor, and a devoted churchgoer. That is exactly how Dennis Rader's family and friends would have described him before finding out the terrifying truth. Welcome back to Twisted Minds. My name is James, and today we look into the case of Dennis Rader, also known as the BTK Killer. We have covered a number of stomach-churning killers during our time on YouTube, and Dennis Rader is up there with the worst. I don't want to give you any spoilers to what you will learn about in this video, but the nickname BTK Killer originates from his self-proclaimed.
How could someone so trusted a father, a church leader, hide such darkness? Dennis Rader's story chills me to the core. The BTK name he gave himself, bind, torture, kill, reveals a mind consumed by control and cruelty. As we dive into this case, I can't help but feel for the families who saw him as Mr. Nice Guy, unaware of the monster beneath. What drives someone to live this double life? Let's unpack the horror together.
Rader became obsessed with Julie Otero and began stalking her and would even spy on her family. If that wasn't sick enough, Rader became infatuated with Otero's 11-year-old daughter, Josephine. After weeks of quietly watching, his urge to get closer to the family got too much, and on the morning of January 15th, 1974, he forced his way inside their family home. Upon entering, he was surprised to see Julie's husband, Joseph, and their 9-year-old son, Joseph Jr., were also home. Rader, who had armed himself with a gun, held the family at gunpoint and proceeded to tie them up and strangle them to death, one by one. After killing Julie and Joseph, Rader strangled their son. Finally, he took Josephine down to the basement of the house and pulled down her pants and underwear before hanging her. After the poor girl took her last breath, the monster pleasured him.
Is gut-wrenching. An 11-year-old girl, Josephine, suffered unimaginable horror. As a parent, I can't fathom the pain of losing your entire family to such evil. Rader's methodical stalking shows how calculated he was, yet he walked among us as a normal guy. The betrayal is sickening. Neighbors trusted him. Kids looked up to him. This case reminds us that evil can hide in plain sight, wearing a smile. How do we protect ourselves when the danger is someone we'd never suspect? It's terrifying.
Wristwatch and a radio. 2.5 months later, the man everyone considered Mr. Nice Guy felt the urge to act upon his twisted lust once again. This time his target was Catherine Bright, a 21-year-old who also worked at the Coleman plant. According to a later confession, Rader used to watch the girl going into her house and one day decided that she would become one of his projects, or PJs, as he liked to call them. On April 4th, 1974, Rader broke into Catherine's home while she was out and calmly waited for her to return. She did eventually come home, but once again, to the surprise of Rader, the woman wasn't alone, returning with her brother Kevin. While holding a gun at the pair, the killer got the two victims to tie each other up. Not the type of people who would go down without a fight. The siblings tried to fight back, but Kevin was shot in the process. Miraculously, the scuffle allowed Kevin to escape and survive the ordeal. Catherine, however, wasn't so lucky and was stabbed 11 times in the torso and back while trying with all her might to fight back against this creep. Although detectives later described the woman as fighting like a hellcat, she lost her life that night. In October 1974, Don Granger, who worked at the Wichita Eagle newspaper, received a strange phone call telling him there was a letter hidden inside a mechanical engineering textbook at the Wichita Public Library that he would be interested in. On investigation, the poorly written note was discovered, which described the Otero killings in great detail. Rader wrote, "When this monster enter my brain, I will never know. But it's here to stay. Also writing, the code words for me will be bind them, torture them, kill them. BTK. You see, he at it again. They will be on the next victim. He eventually signed the note off with, yours truly guiltily. The newspaper gave the letter to the Wichita Police Department, who kept it secretly protected. For several years, Rader went silent, somehow managing to suppress his urges. That was until 1977, when he struck twice. On March 17, 1977, he broke into the home of Shirley Vian. He overpowered her, tied her up, put a plastic bag over her head, and then strangled her to death with a rope. Her 3 young children were at home at the time, and out of sheer terror, had locked themselves in the bathroom. Rader later admitted that he wanted to kill them next, but after Vian's phone began ringing, he got scared and left the house. Just think about how traumatizing this event would have been for those poor children. On December 8, 1977, the BTK Killer broke into the apartment of 25-year-old Nancy Fox. He cut her phone lines, made sure she wasn't home, and waited for her to return from work. After confronting her, he handcuffed her and strangled her with a belt. Once he knew she was dead, he once again pleasured himself before stealing Nancy's driver's license as a sick memento. After the infamy he had gotten from the note published in the newspaper, Rader began enjoying the brazen admission of his crimes, even ringing the police to report the murder from a payphone. In February 1978, he sent a 2-page letter to the Kate TV, something that he just couldn't shake, the need to kill. Only this time, his apple pie church-going life and his perverted urges were about to clash in the most disturbing way. Dennis Rader restarted his evil ways on April 27, 1985, when he began obsessing over an older woman, Maureen Hedge, who lived on the same street as the Rader family. In his usual style, he broke into Maureen's home and hid until she returned home with her boyfriend. This time, however, he waited for the boyfriend to leave and for Maureen to get tucked up into bed before he lunged from the darkness and strangled her to death with his bare hands. Unsatisfied with just taking the life of the woman, he then carried her naked body to the Christ Lutheran Church, where he posed her in a number of bondage positions around the church and took photographs. Absolutely horrifying. After he was done, he dug a shallow ditch and rolled the body inside of it, before burying the body. They say that old dogs can't learn new tricks, but in September 1986, Rader changed up his whole methodology and dressed up as a telephone repairman to knock on the door of his next victim, Vicki Wegerly. As soon as she let him into the home, he aimed his gun at her. With Vicki's 2-year-old son also in the house, the woman fought back when Rader tried to tie her up. Sadly, the monster overpowered her and managed.
Vian's kids locking themselves in the bathroom breaks my heart. Imagine their terror, hearing their mother's final moments. Rader's cruelty didn't just take lives, it shattered families forever. His call to the police after killing Nancy Fox shows he craved attention, like a twisted performer. Played with people's lives for his own sick thrill is infuriating. This case makes you wonder how many others are out there, hiding behind normalcy. We must stay vigilant, because monsters like Rader don't always look the part.
Body before driving away with her car. As he did drive away, Bill Workman, Vicki's husband, was returning home on the opposite side of the road and locked eyes with the stranger driving his wife's car. However, this wouldn't save the 10th and final victim of the BTK Killer, who was 62-year-old Dolores E. Davis. Rader was actually on a Boy Scout camping trip on January 19th, 1991, when he realized he had forgotten something at home. En route to his home, however, this vile killer took a detour and broke into the elderly woman's home by throwing a concrete block through the window. He tied her up and strangled her to death with a pair of pantyhose before hiding the body under a bridge and returning to the campsite like nothing had happened. Whether he felt like his luck would run out or that he was getting too old to keep killing, Rader decided that his killing spree must come to an end. By 2004, the investigation of the BTK Killer had gone ice cold. That is when Rader foolishly tried to send a letter to the police, claiming responsibility for a killing that hadn't been previously linked to him. This ignited interest in the case once again and led the police to taking DNA tests from hundreds of men in an attempt to track down the BTK Killer. In fact, despite 1,100 DNA samples being taken overall, they failed to identify Dennis Rader. Rader eventually sent the police a message on a floppy disk, who quickly checked the metadata of the Microsoft Word document. In this data, they found that the document had been made by a man who called himself Dennis. They also found mention of the Lutheran Church. From that moment, it was down to a simple Google search of Lutheran Church, Wichita, Dennis, which gave the result of a man named Dennis Rader, the president of the Congregation's Council. At this point, the police already knew that the BTK Killer drove a black Jeep Cherokee, the very same type of car parked outside the house of Dennis Rader. Now, you may think that that's the end of our story, but things weren't that simple. Even though the police suspected Rader, they only had strong circumstantial evidence and needed more direct evidence to lock him up. The way they solved this was by controversially obtaining a warrant to test the DNA of a pap smear from Rader's daughter that had been taken at the University of Kansas's medical clinic when she was a student there. The DNA of the pap smear was a near match to the DNA found under one of the victim's fingernails.
Final murders and that floppy disk mistake show how arrogance undid him. He thought he was untouchable, taunting police with letters and using his daughter's DNA to catch him. That's poetic justice. It's chilling to think he was a Boy Scout leader, a church president, while committing these atrocities. Legal system finally caught up, but at what cost? 10 lives lost, countless others traumatized. This case is a stark reminder. Justice may come, but can't erase the pain. How do victims' families find closure after such evil?
Who had evaded the law for 30 long years. After being questioned, Dennis confessed to being the BTK Killer, sharing every gruesome detail of the killings. He even gave detectives the locations of his hidey holes where he stashed his mementos. Among the things found were photographs of Rader dressed up in the clothing of his victims, posing in bondage positions. Investigators believe that he did this to relive the ecstasy of the murders and to put himself in the mindset of his victims. On June 27, 2005, Dennis Rader pleaded guilty to 10 counts of first-degree murder and received the maximum sentence of 10 consecutive life terms. He is currently locked up at the maximum security El Dorado Correctional Facility near Wichita, where he is being held in solitary confinement for his own safety. The man who thought it was his right to enter any home he pleased, to take the lives of innocent people, is now only allowed out of his 80-square-foot cell for 1 hour, 5 times a week. It makes me wonder if Rader would have gotten away with brutally killing his 10 victims if he didn't feel the need to satisfy his own ego by sending letters and hints of his crimes. It is likely he would have carried on being the good husband, the good father, the devoted churchgoer, but above all that, at the very core of his being, he would have continued to be the embodiment of evil.
Confession feels like a gut punch. He detailed every crime like he was proud of it. Locked in solitary now, he's finally caged, but it doesn't undo the horror. His ego, those letters, that disc brought him down. Someone who values family, I'm haunted by the lives he stole. This case teaches us to trust our instincts and demand justice, no matter how long it takes. Let's honor the victims by never forgetting their stories. What are your thoughts on this monster's downfall?